shall listen closely. When darkness wraps the world and dreams begin to stir, you've arrived at the right place. Welcome to Between Dreams and Shadows, the sanctuary of stories that live between sleep and the unknown. Here, every tale is more than a story. It's a portal to hidden worlds, forgotten secrets, whispers from beyond, and shadows that speak as your eyes begin to close. If you're drawn to mysteries, haunting legends, and stories that send shivers down your spine, this channel is your new nighttime ritual. Before we begin, I invite you to become part of this growing nightbound community. Subscribe now and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a tale. New stories drop regularly, always under the veil of night. Like this video, if you enjoy that chill before sleep, it helps this channel grow and lets me bring you deeper, darker stories. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a strange dream? Or felt something watching in the dark? Your experience might inspire the next tale now. Take a deep breath, turn off the lights, leave the world behind, and get ready to drift between dreams and shadows. Setting the atmosphere, I was 9 years old when I first heard the bedtime story that would shatter my sense of safety forever. It was a quiet, windless night, the kind where the silence feels heavier than usual. My room was small, cluttered with the innocent chaos of childhood, toys strewn across the floor, stacks of storybooks leaning against each other like fragile towers, and glow-in-the-dark stars stuck haphazardly on the ceiling. My father, who had always been the storyteller of the house, sat at the edge of my bed, but something was different. His eyes seemed duller, as though some invisible weight pressed upon him. His hands trembled slightly as he opened a faded, leather-bound book I'd never seen before. I noticed it immediately. The air wasn't right. It felt thicker, colder. The comforting hum of the house, the refrigerator downstairs. The faint rattle of the pipe's dash was absent. As he opened the book, a faint draft brushed the back of my neck. I turned instinctively, but nothing was there. No open window, no moving shadow, just the suffocating stillness of the room. Then, he began reading. His voice was lower than usual, almost whisper-like, as though afraid something might hear him. The words were strange, not the kind of silly rhymes or fairy tales I was used to. They were heavier, disjointed, like a story stitched together from broken dreams. Once upon a time, there was a child, just like you, whose room was never truly empty. I chuckled nervously, expecting him to smirk, to reveal it was all part of some joke. But his face remained still, pale, almost regretful, as the story unfolded. The corners of the room seemed darker than they had minutes ago. The shadows stretched just a little further, as if leaning in to listen. That was when I first felt it. A presence, subtle, but undeniable, as though something else was now in the room. Not seen, but certainly there, watching, waiting, a hollow pressure built behind my ears, like the sensation you get before a storm breaks. No thunder came, just silence, oppressive. I wanted to ask him to stop, to read me something else, but my voice caught in my throat. I was frozen, and deep down, a part of me knew. Whatever this story was, it wasn't meant for children, and yet, it had already begun. The first signs of disturbance. The story continued. Each word seemed heavier than the last, as though the air itself resisted them. My father's voice grew more strained, each syllable dragging something unseen closer, or waking something that had always been there. And when the child closed their eyes, the room would change, but only for those who dared to look. My eyes flicked toward the bookshelf across from my bed. One of the books, a thick, red hardcover, was tilted. I could have sworn it was perfectly aligned before. I told myself maybe I had simply Maybe. Then came the shadow. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't move like a person. It was subtle, like the way a dark cloud passes over the sun, but inside my room, where no clouds should ever be. The corner behind my toy chest grew darker, not dimmer, but deeper, as if the shadows there had thickened. My father didn't seem to notice, or maybe, he was pretending not to. His hands trembled more now, gripping the edges of the old book, knuckles white. He didn't look at me anymore, just the pages. The child noticed small things first, like toys not being where they left them, or shadows bending the wrong way. My gaze darted to the toy robot by my dresser. It wasn't facing the wall like it always did. Its plastic eyes were pointed directly at me. I wanted to believe I'd left it like that, but hadn't I? No, I hadn't. A cold pulse of dread crawled up my spine. My fingers gripped the blanket tighter. Then, a soft creak. The closet door. I knew it had been shut. I knew. But now, it stood open just an inch. Just enough to suggest it hadn't been opened by accident. My father's voice faltered. For the first time, he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes glanced out at me but toward the closet. Only for a second. A flash of uncertainty. Or was it fear? Then he cleared his throat and continued reading, pretending nothing had happened. When the child tried to speak, they found their voice didn't work, as if something was listening and didn't want them to call for help. I tried to say something to ask him to stop, but the words dissolved before leaving my lips. My mouth opened, but all that came out was a breathless whisper that even I couldn't hear. At that exact moment, I saw it. The pile of clothes in the closet, shifted, just slightly, like something, or someone, had pressed against it from inside. I squeezed my eyes shut. If I didn't see it, maybe it wouldn't see me. Right. The seconds dragged. Each heartbeat thundered in my ears, louder than anything else. But then, something worse happened. Nothing, absolute, suffocating stillness. When I opened my eyes again, the closet door was shut, completely, as if it had never opened at all. My father slowly closed the book. His face was pale, glistening with sweat. "That's enough for tonight," he muttered. But his hands wouldn't stop trembling. Neither would mine. The presence without a face, the breathing continued slow, heavy, and impossibly real. I stared at the ceiling, expecting no dreading to see something staring back. But there was nothing visible. Yet the weight of its gaze was undeniable. It was like the air itself had formed eyes that knew every thought racing through my mind. I pulled the blanket over my head, as if that thin layer of fabric could shield me. But deep down, a terrible truth had already settled, and it wasn't afraid of being seen. Under the covers, my world became a cocoon of muffled heartbeats and rapid breaths. I squeezed my eyes shut, but that only made the other senses sharper. I could feel it, not as something solid, but as a shift in pressure, a disturbance in the very space around me. Something brushed the edge of my mattress, a dip slight, but unmistakably as though a hand, or a knee, pressed down. Then the soft scrape of plastic against wood. I peeked out. The toy robot was no longer at the foot of the bed. It was now standing upright, right beside my pillow. Its unblinking plastic eyes pointed directly at my face. No footsteps, no noise, just there. A cold, electric numbness crawled across my scalp. My throat tightened. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I wanted to believe I was dreaming, that this was some terrible trick of the mind. But I knew better. The closet door rattled. Once, twice. Then, silence. My eyes darted toward the dresser mirror. At first, it reflected only the familiar my bed, the room, the door, until it didn't in the mirror. The corner of the room was darker, much darker than the real corner. In that reflection, something stood there. Not a figure, not exactly. It was A distortion, a silhouette made of absence, a hollow dent. In reality, a shape where the light simply refused to exist. No face, no limbs, but its outline pulsed, like something breathing just beyond the veil of perception. My skin prickled. The air felt wrong. Heavier, like the room itself had sunk underwater. Then, click. My nightlight, a small plastic star plugged into the wall, flickered and died. Total darkness except the whisper. You heard it. You heard it. You heard it. It circled the room. Sometimes behind me, sometimes beside me, sometimes inside me. I squeezed my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't in the air. It was inside my head, as though the very fabric of my thoughts had been unraveled just enough for something else to slip in. Then tap. A light touch on my shoulder. Not a sharp poke. No. Gentle. Careful. Almost affectionate. I didn't dare turn. I knew without knowing how that if I turned to look, it would show itself, and if I saw it, it would never leave. Not ever. The unspoken warning. I don't know how long I stayed frozen like that, eyes wide open, fists clenched, lungs barely remembering how to breathe. Seconds felt like hours. Hours felt like forever. Then, The whisper stopped, but the silence it left behind was worse. Not because the presence was gone, it wasn't. No, it was because it had shifted. Not away, closer. The air around me became colder, dense, like trying to breathe through wet cloth. And then, I noticed something I hadn't before. A pattern. The taps, the whispers, the movements of the toy. They weren't random. They followed a rhythm, or more disturbingly, an intention. I remembered my father's face earlier, the way he avoided looking at me, the way his hands trembled as he read from that book, and the way when he finished, he never once looked back toward the closet. He knew what that story would do, and he read it anyway. I sat up slowly, too afraid to move quickly, but too terrified to stay still. My eyes scanned the room, searching for something, anything that made sense. That's when I saw it. The book. It was sitting on my desk, but my father had taken it with him when he left. I saw him do it. I remembered, yet, Here it was, open. Pages fluttering, though there was no wind. Drawn to it by a force I couldn't explain, I slipped out of bed. Every step felt like wading through something invisible, something thicker than air. The floor creaked, not like wood, but like breath. I reached the book. My fingers trembled as I flipped to the page it was open to. The words weren't in English. Not anymore. They writhed across the paper like insects trapped beneath glass, moving, rearranging, shifting, into something my mind could only half comprehend. But one phrase became clear. Do not turn around. A fresh wave of dread surged through me. The meaning was unmistakable. Something was behind me. Close, closer than close. Close enough to touch. Close enough to breathe the air. I exhaled. I stared at the page, refusing to turn. But then, the text shifted again. It doesn't like being ignored. My vision blurred. A warm, electric pressure built at the back of my neck, as if someone was standing there, leaning in, inches away. And then, a sound, not a whisper, not a breath, a voice. Clear, deep, resonant. You shouldn't have listened. The desk lamp beside me flickered violently once, twice, and then shattered, plunging the room into a suffocating darkness. But before the light disappeared, I caught a glimpse. A hand. Thin, long. Fingers. Too many fingers. Folding back. Into the shadow, like a spider retreating into a hole. The message was clear. This wasn't just a haunting. This wasn't about fear. It was a warning. But against what? I still didn't understand. The moment of truth, the darkness settled in, like thick fog, swallowing every corner of my room, every familiar shape, until nothing felt real anymore. Only the cold, the silence, and the invisible weight of something, waiting. I stood there, paralyzed by a terrible choice. If I stayed still, maybe it would leave. Maybe, if I ran, where? The door felt impossibly far, like the room itself had stretched. And the horrible part of me whispered, what if it's standing right between me and the door now? But one thought cut deeper than any fear. A realization so clear it felt as if it wasn't mine, but something given to me. This was never about the story, it was about me hearing it. A test, a trap, a rule that had been broken simply by listening. The voice echoed again, not aloud, but in that hollow space where thoughts should be. Now you choose. Pretend it isn't real, or learn what's waiting. The presence didn't move. It didn't have to. Its silence was loud enough, and that was when I noticed. The book. It had changed. Its pages were no longer filled with words, but with something far worse. Reflections, not mirrors. Not exactly, but moving images, flickering like old film reels. I saw a child, alone in their room, a different time, but the same story. The child's mouth was open, screaming, but no sound came out. Behind them something leaned in. Its shape was never clear, just shifting blackness, but its fingers, those terrible, jointed fingers, hovered inches from the child's face. Then, the film rewound violently, flickered, showed another, and another, dozens, hundreds, all of them, children, all of them, alone, listening, all of them, being watched. I staggered back, nearly tripping over my own feet. The pressure in the room shifted, tightening. It was waiting for my decision. I could do what every terrified instinct screamed at me to do: crawl under the bed, hide under the covers, pretend it wasn't real. But some small, rational part of me knew that's exactly what it wanted. Face it. Find out what this was, why it came, why my father read this story knowing this would happen. A low creak echoed behind me, closer than it had ever been. Choose. My hands clenched into fists. I turned. Slowly, the room didn't change. The shadows didn't twist into shapes. Nothing lunged, screamed, or dragged me away. But what I saw was worse. Nothing just emptiness except the knowing that even if I couldn't see it, it saw me, and it was still there. A soft breath brushed against my ear. Good. The inevitability of darkness, the word hung in the air, sinking into my skin like cold ink. Good, but it wasn't praise. It wasn't approval. It was acknowledgement, an acceptance of something irreversible. Something I had just agreed to without understanding the terms. The shadows didn't retreat. They didn't attack either. They simply settled, as if the room itself had sighed, satisfied. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe it's over. Maybe the story was the test, and turning to face it was the answer. But then, something shifted, not in the room, not in the air. In me. A numbness began in my fingertips. A strange, hollow vibration in my bones, like the echo of a sound, too deep for ears. My heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but as though something else had begun. Pacing it, matching it, learning it. The toy robot. It was back in its place by the dresser, sitting exactly where it had been before any of this began. Perfect, untouched, except it wasn't. Its eyes. They were glowing, softly, faint, but real. I blinked once, twice. They were still glowing, watching. I turned slowly toward the mirror. I hadn't wanted to look, but I had to. In the reflection, I was still me. Same messy hair, same pajamas, same terrified face. But behind me, hovering, just barely within the frame, was that shape, that terrible absence. No face, no form, just a distortion in reality itself. As I stared, the shape pulsed, and the walls of the room, breathed. They expanded just slightly and contracted, as if the room itself wasn't a room at all, as if I wasn't inside it, but inside something else. Then the worst realization hit me. This had never been about the bedtime story. That was just the door. The story was the invitation, and hearing it was the agreement. The voice returned, this time softer, closer. Now, you'll never sleep alone again. The closet door creaked open, slowly, but there was nothing inside. Just darkness that didn't match the rest of the room. A darkness too deep, too absolute, as though it led somewhere else, somewhere far worse, a place you don't come back from. Then, the floor under my bed groaned. Something heavy, shifting, stretching, waking. A final whisper crawled into my mind. It knows your name now. And with that, the breathing behind the walls stopped. The toy's eyes flickered off. The shadow in the mirror dissolved like smoke. But the emptiness remained. A silence not of peace, but of patience. Because it wasn't gone, it was waiting. The fear that stays morning eventually came. The first rays of sunlight sliced through the blinds, painting thin lines across my floor. My room was still, quiet, as though none of it had ever happened. The toy robot sat perfectly in place. The closet door was shut. The book, gone. My father never mentioned the story again, never even acknowledged it. That day, when I tried to bring it up, his face drained of all color. He simply shook his head and whispered, "Some things you don't talk about." But the truth was, it never left. The shadows didn't move in daylight, but they watched. The silence of my room wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, loaded, waiting for darkness, because that's when it returns at night. It's subtle, little things. The faint tap on the window when there's no wind. The soft breathing in the walls when everything else is still. The way the toy robot sometimes isn't where I left it, but always ends up by the side of my bed before dawn. I've tried everything. Lights on, music, sleeping on the couch. Nothing matters. Because it isn't the room that holds. It's me, and the worst part, some nights. Right before I fall asleep, I hear it. A whisper, gentle, almost fond. Let's tell the story again. And I know, if I ever really listen, the door opens just a little wider. Because the story doesn't end. It never does. It only waits for someone else to hear it. And now, could you sleep after hearing this? What do you think really happened that night? Is it just a story or something more? Let me know in the comments. And if you dare, choose another tale before bed. But be careful. Some stories listen back